Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tree House. It's me, Stephanie, and I'm here with
Catherine Urban,
Lynette Ramos,
and we are the Fallen Fruit. Today we have a really exciting topic and some other things to dive into. So we're excited to be here. We're going to talk a little bit about Persephone and Demeter, that mother-daughter duo. And how they have some relevance right now because we are entering this time of year when season is changing, harvest, all that good stuff. So let's dive in.
I'm ready.
Yeah, so the equinox officially begins this year on September 23rd. So that's going to be Monday. Hopefully this episode is coming out and in your ears on that day. But yeah, the equinox, the fall equinox always begins when the sun moves into Libra. So then we will also have Libra season. Libra is the time of year where we have balance. Libra is represented by the scales. So we're having an equal balance of night and day all around the globe at that time. But here in the northern hemisphere, the colors are changing. And we are starting to feel, as Stephanie mentioned, the season shift. It's starting to get colder. We're starting to harvest. We're starting to kind of move those crops inside. And yeah, it's very appropriate that we're talking about Demeter, the goddess of the harvest and agriculture, and Persephone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually feel the harvest energy. Like feeling like things are coming to a culmination, starting to see some of the rewards come in. And it's like going into that season of rest or we're leaning towards that. So it feels good to kind of like feel like you're landing.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
To feel like, all right, I'm here. Like, let's get to work. Virgo was all about that, like crossing your T's, dotting your I's, tucking everything in. And you're right, like moving into then Libra season of just being in balance. And I think being here, a lot of the tarot cards I've been pulling lately have been like temperance, and the 7 of coins, which is, same thing. Like make sure everything's good. Think about, the bigger picture. What are you harvesting right now for those future goals?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the harvest moon always comes. It's the full moon in September, and that's usually during Virgo season. And it's like the moon illuminates the night so that you can be more productive with like hurrying up before the first frost comes, But yeah, Libra season, it's really a balance of that hard work to kind of finish up everything you need to do outside to prepare for surviving the winter. But it's also a time of celebration. So it's like equal balance of enjoying the fruits of your labor and also kind of working.
Yeah.
Because we just had another like pop of 80-degree weather and all my roses and flowers are starting to bud again.
Nice.
Ooh.
So it's like you're still kind of.
I like that.
Yeah.
That feels inspiring.
In-between.
Yes. Yeah. And this is also the time of year where the veil starts to thin. So it's real juicy time for us at the Fallen Fruit.
I've been feeling that magic in the air too.
Yeah.
And I think that when you start talking about Libra season being like the balance, what made me think about is, yes, it's been about like the forward movement and the task. But for me lately, especially with the Pisces full moon, I've been doing a lot of internal work and seeing like the mindset work and what we're doing on the inside and how it's impacting the outside too. So I think we're learning when to go in and then when to take action.
Yeah. It does feel like that. Like I feel very much like I like being alone and like going within, and it's like, doing all this work, real work, and then, work on self. But also, whenever I feel called, I'm like, yeah, let me like go spread some of all this goodness I've been working on. So it's a good time of balance. I am a Libra moon, so maybe that's why I'm like, yes.
Oh, and I have a lot to learn from both of you because my North Node is in Libra.
Yes.
And so I want to like take some notes, observe kind of like your energies because I want to obviously like implement some of that.
In that way. Yeah, we can teach you about the Libra-ness.
I'm open.
I'm a Libra sun, if anyone didn't know.
If you couldn't tell.
But I too, this is my favorite time of year, and not because I like being the center of attention, because I hate when people sing me happy birthday, so just don't. But I do like to celebrate my birthday. And for me, this is a very spiritual time of year as well. Like yesterday, I took a walk down to Edgewater Beach, and you hear the wind howling, and the wind sounds different when the leaves are dying. You know, it just sounds like death is in the air, but I never felt more alive.
I love that.
And I love the smell of the leaves, and I like stepping on leaves that are crunchy, and I love it. I can't get enough of it. And speaking of death, I think it's a good segue into our star of the show, Persephone. One of the most interesting things that I found in researching this story is that she, you know, Persephone and Hades, they ended up having a strong relationship. And one of the things that Hades told Persephone was that, you know, in the upper world with the Olympians, there's a lot of infidelity, and death is the number one companion.
Okay.
Like, you can't escape it.
No.
So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
But perhaps we should explain a little bit about this story for anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah, I can dive in. I was like reading all about it, and then Persephone has a special place in my heart because when I was in like 4th grade, we were taught all about Greek mythology and all that good stuff. And when I heard Persephone, I was like, that sounds like Stephanie. I was like, Persephone, that's me. But her also being like above and below, that calling of like the duality, being the queen of the underworld. I mean, you know, I think there are some parallels there. Anyway.
That sounds like a good title for one of your books. Persephone.
I thought, like, I was like, I kind of want to change my name. Like, I was like, I want that name. It's too late, though. I've already been published. I can never change my name. So she, Persephone, was the daughter of Demeter and Zeus. Demeter was the goddess of the harvest and like grain and all that good stuff. And she really loved her daughter. It was like, you know, kind of a shitty relationship with Zeus. Let's face it. Zeus is like a fuck man, not even a fuck boy.
Unavailable dad.
A fuck god. And so she loved her daughter, though. They had like the best relationship. Like, think of any good mother-daughter relationship. Not mine. I don't know anybody, but still. They were like tight BFFs. So Persephone was out one day picking flowers. It was actually the flower, the narcissus, that like caught her attention. Narcissism's gonna kill you. And while she was distracted, prior to this, actually, hold on, let me backtrack. Hades was like, Persephone is a dime, and was like, Zeus, let me get your daughter. And Zeus was like, I did tell you could have anyone you wanted. All right, then. And actually, Gaia helped the two of them conspire because she created the opening in the earth that Hades popped out of to kidnap Persephone. So he kidnapped her while she was distracted by the flower, burst through the earth.
And he must have looked real fine, too. Just like Lord of the Underworld.
Yeah,
just like
on a chariot of horses. Like he had like skeleton horses chariot. Like I would get in too. I'm like, where are we going, bro?
Right. She wants the bad boy.
A little, you know. So then he takes her down to the underworld and they're kicking it there, doing their thing. Her mom, obviously Demeter, becomes very upset because she does not know where her daughter is. It's actually Hecate.
Hecate. I think
Hecate. I always say it wrong.
I say Hecate. I've heard it different ways.
Yeah,
though.
I was trying to look up the pronunciation. Anyway, her.
We're with you.
She is the goddess of magic and witchcraft, though. So big ups her. Love her. She heard Persephone's screams as she was being carried to the underworld. Nobody else did. Apparently, they were all busy. And so she showed herself to Demeter and was like, I don't know where your daughter is, but I heard her. We'll go to Zeus. Like, we'll find her. Zeus wasn't being very helpful. So then they went above one to Helios, the god of sun. And he was like, I do see everything. And I definitely saw that shit go down. Yeah, she's in the underworld. So they then followed Hecate's torches into the underworld. And he was like, cool, I'll bring your daughter back. My bad. But he isn't letting her go that easy. Like I said, she was a dime. So he had her eat some pomegranate seeds from the underworld. And if you eat anything from the underworld, you must always go back. So that was his little trick. And to appease everybody after they found out what Hades had done, Zeus was like, all right, you can come be up here with your mother for 2/3 of the year. But for 1/3 of the year, you must go back down to the underworld to rule by Hades' side.
Mm-hmm.
So there we have it.
1 month for every pomegranate seed.
Yes.
Yeah. So very interesting story. So that story at its most basic level tells us about the seasons and why we have the seasons. And so like when Demeter was mourning her daughter, she refused to produce abundance on the earth. And so after a few months, the people were starving, and the gods were like, hey, Zeus, you got to intervene here, man, because if all the people die, we can't be worshipped. And so Zeus was like, okay. And so he ended up sending Hermes down to retrieve.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Hermes.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of pieces to this story. But anyways, so that basically gives us the reason for the seasons. And if you were to go back and listen to our second episode, because this is a very ancient story. The basis of this story predates Greek myth. So if you actually go back to episode 2, when we're talking about Inanna and Ereshkigal, we see very similar stories where Inanna is in the underworld and, she's the goddess of fertility. And so the land is dying. And so there is an intervention, and basically her slam piece's sister, Ginese, is the goddess of agriculture also. And so she goes in the underworld half the year. So that was a Sumerian myth, which predates Greek. Yeah. So go back to episode 2.
And look at that.
Yeah. But speaking of Hecate being in the underworld, I really think that this is an interesting piece to the puzzle, because we've talked a little bit about Hecate. She deserves her own episode, but she's the triple goddess. Mm-hmm. She is the goddess of, like Stephanie said, magic and ritual. And, she's also the goddess of the crossroads. Mm-hmm. And we talked in our last episode about blood initiation and blood, the trifold phases of life, basically. Mm-hmm. And she is in the underworld as Persephone's confidant. And I feel like Persephone, the maiden, before she goes in the underworld, she comes out a queen, right? So she enters as a maiden, she comes out as a queen. That is an initiation right there.
It is.
And Hecate is the midwife of that.
Yeah. And even we're talking about other goddesses, Lilith, the same thing. When we did your quantum healing session and you connected with the Lilith energy, it was the same thing. There was this time where she had to be in this space of death and decay and survival. And then when she actually was able to surpass that or endure through that, then she was able to go to the pyramids and experience this higher level of energy or vibration. So we do see that repeated.
Yeah. This story is said to have 3 chapters. There's the loss, and then the searching, and then the ascent.
Yes.
And that is so archetypal in all of our lives.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We go through big change.
When I speak with women, especially creatives and entrepreneurs, many of them think that they've done enough in a sense, or it's they wonder why it's not working. And most of us have to do more than what we think we need to do. So it's almost remembering these ancient stories, remembering that we have to go through these things, and sometimes we have to give more than we think we have, but we always make it, and there's always beauty on the other side too. Yeah. So if we know that that's just something that historically happens, I think we can be a little easier on ourselves and understand our journey too.
Yeah. I mean, that goes when we started this whole podcast, it was about, tapping into the shadow self and the dark goddess and things like that. And you don't get to dark goddess status by things coasting and being easy. And same thing with life. Like, you do not get the beauty, that real raw beauty out of life if you're not uncomfortable sometimes and if you don't go through the shit to get there.
Exactly.
Yeah. And don't you feel different when you're around a woman or a man that has endured something so great, but then you see like their shine, you see like this love that they have, and it's like you can feel that around people, like, man, you've been to the other side and back.
You've seen some shit.
And that's why in certain traditions, I mean, there's so many ways you could practice astrology, but in some traditions, the more esoteric traditions view Pluto as like an esoteric sun. Okay. So, and anyone who's endured a Pluto transit, because we're talking about Hades here, Hades and Pluto are one. When you get that Pluto transit, it changes you. It transforms you. It changes your life. It makes you feel vulnerable and raw, and you feel like you've just let go of so much. But yes, when you come out of it, like, there is this really strong strength and brilliance about you because you're renewed.
What age is that you go?
It's different for everyone. Everyone will go through a Pluto square Pluto around the age of 40. It's different depending on what decade you were born in, because Pluto has a weird orbit. But you can get a Pluto transit at any age. So, for example, like right now, if you, like, Pluto's in Capricorn at like 20 degrees. So if you have anything at 20 degrees, Capricorn, Aries, Cancer, or Libra, you are going through Pluto right now.
Me.
Big change. What do you have at
Libra.
20?
I think it's, it may be my North Node.
Oh, I don't know that yet. Okay. But when I have my reading with Catherine, like, what, next week? Yeah.
On the equinox. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But my midheaven too is at 21.
Ooh.
Yeah,
21 Libra?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, your career, your presence in the world is getting the Pluto right now.
Yeah, I feel it.
So everyone look out for Lynette in a few years.
Say a prayer for me.
She's going to be busting through the earth with her chariot of skeleton horses.
And we see it in this myth too, because Persephone, like, we call this story the quote unquote, sorry, trigger warning, rape of Persephone.
Yeah, that is what it's called.
In ancient times, the word rape was interchangeable between sexual assault and also kidnapping. So it's kind of both what happens to her. But like, if you look at the myth at first, like, she is wronged. She is assaulted. She is, abducted, like trauma, a tragedy. But then, like, she comes out with this strength, and she is the queen of the underworld. And not only is she the queen of the underworld, but she ends up like being more of a boss than Hades. Like, she ends up making a lot of these decisions. And so I feel like that's what a Pluto transit really is. It goes from disempowerment to hardcore empowerment.
Yeah.
Really is.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when we talk about some of the parallels, even her name, when we get to like the base Persephone, her name, it means, I think it says, to bring or cause death. So we see that parallel again about death and rebirth, about the transformation. And a lot of people describe like their transformations as like this obliteration. Like, you literally feel like you may not make it. And so when we see these stories, whether it's Egypt, Mesopotamia, Sumeria, like, they have these, the names change, but like you said, the stories are very consistent. And so again, I always think about what does the whole mean? Again, we learn these things in school, but only from the perspective of myth.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, we don't know what is fact. We don't know, there's some threads in there, but I just like the fact that it's so consistent no matter what part of the world.
Yeah. And I mean, because this story is so archetypal,
like, it goes into, there's like an actual term for this story and the other stories like it, because like you said, we've seen it. Scholars even believe that Persephone, she had a few other names that appear, but they're like Persephonia, Persephassa, Persephata, Hurafaha or something. And they believed that because she had so many different names and that they were kind of hard to pronounce, that she existed in other religions as well. And it all comes back to this thing, I don't know a better word, the dying and rising god archetype. And so this was something that scholars believed that these different religions, cultures made up to explain fertility rites surrounding the yearly cycle of vegetation. So that this one, because that was such an important way of life, like without food, without agriculture, we don't survive. So this myth is especially like prominent and important.
So it's a myth of a dying and rising god. Sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
Can't imagine from where.
So like
who be resurrected that we hear about
at Easter in the spring when Earth comes back to life. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of my favorite things I learned in researching this was that so in the ancient mysteries, the Eleusinian mysteries, like when Persephone returned from the underworld and was reunited with her mother, it was like she was being rebirthed as the divine child. So not only was she being reunited with her, but she was like youthful and innocent and like childlike again. Isn't that crazy?
That's wild.
It's like Jesus. Jesus was a woman.
Jesus was a woman. Oh, the church is coming for us now. That's when you know we've made it.
Right.
Like, somebody ban us. I don't care.
Wait,
I'm trying to get banned.
My first hater, I like celebrated it. Like my first email talking about like the stuff that I was doing was like devil worshiping, devil-ish. I was excited. Like, good.
Every once in a while, someone will ask me if I'm a pagan, and I'm like, I'm doing something right.
Yeah, I've had people ask that before. Like, you're Wiccan, right? I'm like, no, I'm not Wiccan. I'm wicked.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it also makes me think about when we learn about these goddesses and how they were connected with the earth and its cycles, like how we have kind of been disconnected from being in the cycles with the earth. Like even the fact that you can pick up the difference in the way something sounds because you're more in touch with nature. Like for me, I don't live in that type of environment, but I want to be able to spend more time in nature because I think you'll be able to pick up on all the nuances. And I think that we can, I feel like, be in a more harmony because we're like following the natural cycles. And I think that many of these goddesses did that. They were able to adapt, and in some of these stories, they were the ones that caused the changes. They had a direct impact on the earth and its cycles.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we kind of live in a really great place, even though, you know, I knock this city all the time, but living in the Midwest, like we experience all 4 seasons at their very peak, and like they're for better or for worse. But as I've gotten older, I've started to appreciate, especially like those winters, like, yeah, we might get trapped in the house for 4 days, but at the same time, like, you could do a lot of reading, like, you know, research, going within, working on creative projects, and like you don't have the distraction or excuse of social gatherings or things you have to do. It's like, 'cause you can't leave your fucking house.
Yeah.
That's the inner work, the underworld.
Yeah, we do. We get trapped, and it's like, you better like yourself, or it's gonna be a rough 4 days. But to bounce back to the Eleusinian, right?
Yeah,
Eleusinian mysteries, because this was a cult that was like built around this myth. But Catherine found out some interesting information about some of their practices.
Yes, very juicy indeed. So basically, the Eleusinian mysteries, we do not actually know what went down because it was kept secret. The number one rule of initiation was, this is secret. Like, you have to be initiated in order to know the mysteries. And this would happen once a year. And what we do know about it is that they would descend into a temple of Demeter, and it was underground. This tradition was kept alive basically to like 300 something AD when the Christians destroyed everything. But the last Roman emperor who was initiated was Julius Caesar. He was initiated into it because he was pagan. And so anyways, we don't know exactly what happened, but we do know that it was a night, and the people, the initiates would get together. It was priests, first-time initiates, and people who were returning, who were already initiated. And the first thing that they would do, or one of the main first things that they would do, was ingest a substance. And then they would go into an evening of visions. So it is believed that they were ingesting a beverage that was psychoactive. What it was, there's a couple theories. So Demeter, her Roman name is Ceres. So she's the goddess of the grain. We get that word cereal and cerveza. And just as a side note, Persephone's Roman name was Prosperina. But there was a fungus that would grow on the barley, which we used to make beer. And it was supposedly psychoactive, you know, like a magic mushroom. And so maybe that was what they were ingesting. The other theory is that because this is so ancient, Demeter's origins may have come from Crete, which was a female-dominated culture.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And like the Minoan culture, we have the snake goddess and everything, that sculpture. And she was one of her main symbols was the poppy. And we know that poppies are also opiates. Yeah. So it could have been opiates that they were taking. The other option is that they were taking flowers, because, and we can get into this more, but Persephone and Demeter had a lot of associations with flowers. Yeah. And I know one of the first times I hallucinated was with morning glory seeds, but don't try that at home because most of them have pesticides in them. So just don't. But it was an incredible trip, I will say that.
Speaking of incredible trips, you set us up. I'm just kidding. We actually had our own little like fallen retreat a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
It was like one of the last weekends in August where we took something.
We took an Eleusinian beverage.
We took a little Eleusinian snack.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Chocolate.
We're getting warmer.
Yeah, but I mean, anytime, it was dope. I mean, going in with like you guys, and we had a great time, and we got to see probably one of the dopest sunsets I've ever seen.
The dopest,
like, it was breathtaking.
It was like a rainbow in the sky, and I don't think it was the psychoactive effects of our snack, but like it, to me, it really, I don't know. But then to me, when I do those things, it's like taking the blinders off. Like, this is what God intended. So yeah, I feel like I did see it the way it was.
It was like, and it was one of the first nights that it got cold too.
Yeah, it was cold.
So I think it was our Eleusinian ritual. But yeah, that was really fun to do that with you all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they say that we can only see about 1% of reality with our naked eyes. So I think that when you partake in some of these substances, you can see more. And that's why, again, going back to the mysteries and the initiations, again, in many cultures, they did the same thing. That was the way that they communed with spirit. And so I've always said, like, it's one thing to talk about spirit and all of that, but it's another thing to experience it. So it's like, that's what, you know, again, our ancestors and these myths suggest in a lot of, I always say ancient texts. When I listen back to the podcast, I think that's one of my favorite phrases, but in many of our ancient texts, we see these things.
Yeah. So, even in the Upanishads, the ancient Vedic texts, they consume a psychoactive, supposedly metaphysical substance called soma, and that helps you commune with the gods.
Yep.
Yeah,
I believe it.
We see it everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, anytime I've done any of said substances, like I said, I feel more in tune. Like, naturally, day to day, I'm a very forgetful, clumsy person. But when I'm on these substances, I'm navigating through downtown Chicago with no GPS. I'm, you know, like, I am on my A game. Yeah. And I'm like, move out of the way, world. I'm fucking in tune, bitch. I am tuned in. But seriously. And then I'm like, God, why can't I operate like that all the time? maybe
microdose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm a fan of the ritual. And this was an ancient ritual that lasted for years, and people would do it to understand like basically the meaning of life, because this is the thing: death and rebirth, life, death, rebirth. And that was what was honored, and that's what was observed, and that's what people were trying to touch, basically, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, death is the one inescapable companion. And in some traditions, it's believed that if you welcome death, and if you always believe that death is right next to you, then you can live life even fuller.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I think I've been writing about it a lot, just also assessing, like, I grew up with a lot, like, death is like a member of my family. I feel like some of my earliest memories are funerals and things of that nature.
Really?
Yeah, through like every phase of my life have always been like really prominent, like impactful, meaningful deaths. And so trying to think about that in a sense, like, but I'm not scared of it.
Yeah.
Like whatever happens, happens. We're all just winging it till we fucking croak anyway. I had an interesting conversation with Miranda from Coven the other day. Shout out Miranda. Love you.
Hey.
But we were talking about that. She was like, everybody's just like winging it. If you say you have a plan or that, you know, it's like, cause death can come at any time. So why not just say yes and say fuck it a bunch and try some shit out.
Yeah.
Say fuck it a bunch.
I like that. Fuck it a bunch.
As we've talked about too in previous episodes, you know, like things are constantly dying in life. Like phases of your life die and certain relationships die and certain, you know, passions that you have die. And it's just, it clears the space. It clears the outworn so that new things can come in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we give too much credit to consistency. I think that there's a time and place for it. I'm not saying we should like dip our toes in and just always exit when it gets difficult. But I think that, yeah, there's a time where you just have to let it go, and it's okay to keep redefining yourself and not, you know, not just stick to something to say, oh, you know, I've been married 30 years and I'm going to stick with it just because. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like you're dying, but you want this facade of happiness. So yeah, it is learning to like that ebb and flow. It doesn't have to be where you have to do something over and over and over again just because.
And when you know things are not going to last forever, you can appreciate things. So like, again, Persephone has a beautiful relationship with flowers. And we know that flowers, when you cut them and you arrange them on your table, that they're only going to last for maybe a week, you know, so you just admire their temporary beauty. But yeah, Persephone in her myth, like as Stephanie mentioned, she was admiring the narcissus flower, which by the way is, I guess, a daffodil. I looked it up and I was like, wait, that's kind of basic.
But all these people getting like their life thrown through the shit over a daffodil.
I mean,
imagine?
I like daffodils and all, but aren't they like mostly blooming in the spring though?
Oh, I don't know.
So,
I need to get better about my botany.
There's different kinds of narcissus flowers, but daffodils are part of that genus or whatever. But yeah, in another myth, Persephone is lusting after Adonis, and she's in a battle for Adonis. We know he's like the perfect man, and Aphrodite also wants him too. So the deal is that they share him, and Adonis refuses to go back to the underworld with Persephone, so she sends a wild boar to kill him.
Nice.
In Aphrodite's arms, and then he turns into an anemone flower. Those are pretty. I looked it up. It's really pretty. And in another one, it's unclear whether this was Hades' prior lover to Persephone, because again, they're pretty committed to each other.
Yeah.
But she is like, whatever, Hades, I'm more beautiful than Persephone. And Persephone is like, oh yeah, bitch. And she turns her into the mint plant.
Yeah, I did read that one too.
And so Persephone gets revenge by turning people into flowers, which is pretty great.
That's like a badass, but like soft ass thing at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm kind of here for it. Libra, balance. Like, I'm gonna fuck you up, but I'm gonna turn you into a flower. Like, it's gonna be fine.
Enjoy.
Yeah, I'm gonna kill you with a smile on my face.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah, like Libra is actually pretty good at delivering a insult that sounds like a compliment. Pretty good at that. And in astrology, we describe Libra as the iron fist and the velvet glove.
Oh,
Because Libra knows how to get shit done,
Yeah.
but Libra can make it sound like it was your idea or our idea.
That makes sense. Because like even I think that again with my North Node in Libra, it's like I'm learning to be like that, the diplomatic.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, how can we achieve some sort of harmony? Let it be a win-win. So
yeah.
And it's like, that's what the agreement was. And that's what we compromise on. And that's what Persephone ends up doing, is compromising. Like, I'm going to be with my mom and then I'm going to be with my husband. So, compromise.
Yeah. Best of both worlds, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. But, yeah. So.
the one thing that I find interesting that I wasn't able to really gather a lot of information on, but it was that she was the protectress of the afterlife. So from your opinions, what did the afterlife symbolize back then? Because I always like to look at something from before and apply it to now. Like, what is our afterlife? How do we identify with the afterlife?
So they had two joints that you could go to after you die. Like, basically, like you go to Hades, you go to the underworld,
Yeah.
you cross the river Styx. Like, it is basically hell. You're a sea of souls down there, and it's not a fun place to be. It's cold and it's dark. But then there's another world called Eleusia, and that is a place where you went to if you didn't have, like, if you were a good person, basically. So it was like quote unquote heaven. But the thing about Eleusia is it was endless day, and there was trees and fruits, like Garden of Eden, but you went there because you were also in waiting to be reborn.
Okay. So if she was the protectress of that, I guess I'm just wondering, was she helping to decide, or was she just managing it?
She did. She made a lot of decisions. So, because the thing is that what we see in a lot of ancient myths is that your time in the underworld can be almost negotiable in some cases. So there was one guy who was really known for his wisdom.
Yeah.
And when you go to the underworld, you're stripped of everything. But Persephone was like, yeah, you can keep your genius. You can keep your intelligence down here.
Yeah, I read too that it was Homer, that dude, not the Simpson. He was a poet, or yeah. Odyssey, all that good stuff. He described Persephone as the quote unquote formidable, venerable, majestic queen of the underworld who carries into effect the curses of men upon the souls of the dead. Whoa. But that also, there's an earlier version of this myth, because a lot of the details of the myth kind of get skewed, I guess, depending on time frame. But where Hecate rescues her. Yeah. So then it's this relationship between death and fertility, and how the two, you cannot have one without the other.
Yeah.
And does it ever feel too when death may be prominent, or there's a death in your life that shortly thereafter is a birth?
You see that a lot, in families even too. Yeah. Also, I found out about Persephone's temples real quick. There are a few. Sicily was a really big hotspot for her worship. But there's also a temple in the town that my father was from. No way.
Really?
Yeah, Calabria.
Whoa.
I know, they have a temple for her there.
Oh.
And yeah, I should
Field
go.
trip.
I can go see my family.
Yes. Wow, that sounds amazing.
So another little interesting tidbit that I learned is that So Persephone was like really, really beautiful. And she had a lot of suitors after her. Like Apollo wanted to marry her. Even Hermes wanted to marry her. And Hermes, he is on the non-binary. Like he's gender non-conforming. Mm-hmm. And even he wanted to marry her. And also Ares, Mars wanted to marry her. And even Hephaestus wanted to marry her. So she had like all these major Olympian characters wanting to marry her, and they were willing to give up a lot, and she turned them all down. And Demeter was like really worried about that, so she ended up going to see an astrologer. I read in one of the versions, and the astrologer said before she chooses a suitor, or before a suitor chooses her, her innocence will be taken. So supposedly, while Demeter was hiding her away from that prediction, Zeus, what a fucking asshole. Zeus always changes forms to like seduce women, and he like changed form into like some kind of dragon, and he like had sex with his own daughter.
Ew.
Yeah.
These Greeks they were playing some different games.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, and then as we talked about, yeah, Zeus was like, all right, Hades, you can have her now.
Jesus.
I know.
But I mean, of all the suitors to get, I guess Hades would be the best.
The one.
He was the least promiscuous, that's
Really?
for sure. Yeah.
You would think as the guard, like, the god of hell, you'd be like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Sinning.
Yeah, he's like the bad boy.
Yeah, that's why, well.
When I first heard this story, I was just thinking about how many like how often do you see like the 30-year-old dude like seducing the 18-year-old? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that just kind of, that's what I thought of when I first heard this story. And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Gross.
I guess thinking about age, well, it wasn't a big deal because I was around everyone my age. But now that I'm like, I don't know, 32. But I keep running into people who are like in their like mid 20s, and I'm like, what does this say about me as a person? Like maybe I need to stop hanging out at places where like 20 somethings.
You're youthful.
I am youthful though. That's true.
Yeah.
Like I'll forever be 16, I think.
Forever young.
Yeah. When I was younger, I would date guys that were older.
Me too.
Yeah.
And then over like the last, 15 or so years, everyone's been at least like 4 years younger than me. So I don't know.
Yeah. The daddy issues.
I have none of those.
Me neither.
No. I mostly dated people my age. Like the oldest person I dated was 5 years older than me. But yeah, I don't know. Age is a weird thing, I guess. I don't really pay too much attention, but I don't know that I could date somebody who was like in their 40s or 50s, which is weird.
Yet.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Not
Like
yet.
that's just a bit. Oh, I mean, I'm just saying though, if he fine and got like a yacht, holler.
No, I know what you mean.
Or she is fine and got. Listen, I am open. Open
it.
for yacht business.
And even too, like on the darker end of it, like the I just lost the word incest. That has been something that I found that has been repetitive in these stories, some sort of incest. And even talking to people in current day, like that is actually more prevalent than I think we talk about.
Oh my God.
I saw this podcast where this professor, he had did like a really informal survey of the people in his class. And there was, I don't want to exaggerate the numbers, but there was like 60-70% of the women there had some sort of experience or knew someone. So it was like really interesting. So again, when we talk about like the myths, like what is that about? Like how, I don't know.
Yeah.
The human condition is fucked up.
Yeah. Full stop.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know a lot about it, but I've even heard like in the animal kingdom that's not something that those boundaries aren't crossed. And, even when we look at like when people have past life experiences or other life experiences, our soul families can kind of swap. So in one life, it could be your husband, the other one, it could be your brother. So sometimes they say that we travel with these groups and then the roles change. So I'm wondering if there's any cross there. So if you were romantic with this person in another life, what is the experience in this life? Is there something left over from that? Is there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too, and it definitely resonates that like if under the premise that like this is Earth school and we came here with certain soul contracts, and there's people in our soul family that we came here to learn different lessons from one another, that, you know, my mom in this life, maybe I was her mom in a different life,
right?
Or maybe we were best friends, or we were sisters, or we were enemies, or we were lovers, and that could have been true. All of those could be true.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a weird thing.
it is very weird, but also very cool. So anyone have anything else left to add for Persephone and Demeter?
I think we covered it.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Yeah, I
feel
do
good
too.
about it.
Feeling good too. I'm really excited for Halloween though. I know that like this is our high season.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Here,
I mean, I've been talking to people lately, and they're like, "Oh, how things been?" I'm like, "It's busy season, y'all."
Yeah.
Yeah, we're open for hire too. We're about, let's see, by the time this episode launches, we'll be like 50 days out from Halloween too. So if you want to book us at your parties, like hit us up ASAP, because I'm already starting to get booked for events around Halloween.
Yeah,
so.
same. Yeah, a lot of events, which is cool, but house parties. I did one last year that was really fun.
Yeah,
so
also invite us to your party.
Invite us to your parties. We'll live podcast it up at your Halloween party. Shit.
Yeah.
We can, whatever, tarot readings, astrology readings.
Yeah.
Cards.
And we're going to be into like interviewing other people.
Yes.
So if anyone wants to throw like a little party or event, we could interview you, eat some good food.
Let us
See
know.
what happens.
Let us know. Okay, so Lynette, do you have any events coming up that you want to tell everyone about?
It'll be past by the time this airs.
Okay. Okay. Stephanie, how about you?
Well, I just have stuff at Coven. So you can catch me there every weekend, Friday and Saturday, 3 to 8. Come get a tarot reading. Quit waiting. It's getting busy.
Yeah.
Other than that, no, I don't.
I do have something that I want to just plug in general. The event that I'm going to be participating in will pass. Sorry, I can't speak today. But anyway, I'm going to be working with Julia de Burgos, which is an arts and cultural organization in Cleveland. And we're going to be doing a project around cultural preservation. So it's going to be including things around like bomba, which is a Puerto Rican dance, and it's going to involve music, etc. So there's going to be some ongoing events, and Stephanie will actually be a part of that as well.
Yeah,
so I'm excited to be able to be a part of that, and
come
awesome.
find out some stuff. Get hip. There's so many Puerto Ricans here in Cleveland. You literally have no excuse to not know shit about us.
Come on down.
Yeah, good food, beautiful people.
Oh yes,
always.
And then, I have some juiciness coming up. Wednesday, September 25th, 7 p.m. I'm going to be teaching a class on cusps at Coven. If you think you're a cusp, or you want to know a little bit more about what cusps are and what they aren't, please come to this class. This class is for everyone, not just if you were born on a cusp of a sign change. And so we're going to be exploring some advanced concepts to explain why people do, the very valid reason why people feel like they are a cusp. So please come down. I love teaching and I love being at Coven. So please join us. Other things I have coming up, I'm going to also be doing a book launch party at Coven.
Hey.
And that is going to be on Saturday, November 16th. I'll be signing and selling copies of my new book, Your Astrological Cookbook. And you can get it at Coven. We're going to be serving some cupcakes and having drinks. So please come down.
We'll be there.
Ooh, do we know what time?
So I think it's going to be at 7,
okay,
like the
good.
party.
Okay,
but
I
might
can
be
make it.
there earlier in the day, just like
I'll be there
selling.
regardless because it's Saturday. So.
Yeah, I might just want to come hang out all day. And then I also I'm going to be speaking at the NCGR NYC Fall Conference. I'm going to be speaking on Saturn in Aquarius. And that is going to be the weekend of November 23rd and 24th in New York City. And I will also be having a book release party there. Details to come. And then I'm also having another book release party. Sorry, guys, my season. And that'll be on Saturday, December 14th at Barnes & Noble on Sugar and Boulevard from 2 to 4. So, yeah. Yeah, so
Yay.
that's what I got for right now. I'll also be having a mini series on the planets at Coven, so details to follow.
Ooh.
Catherine's busy.
It's my busy season.
This is your busy season. Hey.
Libra.
Yeah, I've been busy with like other work, and I have a few like tarot events, but they're like you gotta pay for a ticket and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, sorry, 2 more. I'm also going to be offering mini astrology readings at the opening of Pop Life. There's going to be, you guys should come through not just to get an astrology reading, but there's also going to be Aura, and they're going to be doing aura photography. So that's going to be on October 11th at Pop Life on Waterloo. And then I'll also be at their official grand opening on November 1st.
Very nice. I do want to do the aura photo thing.
Me too.
I mentioned we should do that.
I got to get there early.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today on The Fallen Fruit. And drop us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And let us know if there's any topics you want to hear more about or just random feedback. And, of course, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us and continue to do the work.
Yeah. And follow us on Instagram at The Fallen Fruit Podcast. Bam.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.
Bye.